Hey guys, Liam here from Formula God. I am one of the co-founders of Formula God along with Andrew Charlton, my cousin. Today I'm going to be giving you a little run through Formula God, some kind of top tips on use, and also running through some of the most common types of commands that you might want to be using. Alright, let's take a look. So the first thing to go over today is headers. Commonly when you're working with data, you're likely going to have headers on your sheet. But this is the area where Formula God gathers all of its context around your data. So one kind of housekeeping point on Formula God is to make sure that your data has well labeled headers. Now there are ways to use Formula God without headers, and we'll look at that. But typically if you have, say, a list of cities and you title it bananas, you might get a little bit of confusion there. On the output. So yeah, one thing to take away is good headers on your data will make your life a lot easier when you're using Formula God. A next important element of using Formula God is going to be selecting your data. Now typically when people are working in Google Sheets, you might select your data like this, select an entire column or an entire group of columns. But as you can see by the highlighted blue, what this does is also select everything underneath it, and when you run Formula God, it's going to loop through all of those empty cells. So what we would recommend you do when using Formula God in order to A, not waste your credits, and B, make sure your functions run faster, is just to select your data accurately within the sheet. Now, Formula God will still work if you select entire columns or entire rows, but certainly if you want your commands to run a little bit faster, I would select your data like this. Another element of data selection that we're looking to work on during this beta is multiple columns. Right now, as it is in Formula God, you can't select multiple columns like this and then run a command. It just won't get it. So what you would need to do alternately is to select that whole range of data that encompasses what you want to analyze or what you want to change, and then specify in your command what it is you want to do. Formula God will just ignore any relevant data selected and will just use the data that is relevant to your command or your query. You can also, as I'm shown here, hide columns if you are working on a large sheet, and then you can select over the top there to make your life a little bit easier. But in general, selecting groups of data is the way to go using Formula God. Okay, so now that we know that we should have accurate headers in our data and that we should select our data accurately, the next thing is getting into the Formula God bar itself. So I'll close that down a second so I can show you just quickly how you open that. So once you've installed, you head up to Extensions, find Formula God and click Open Sidebar. This will run a small script that will then pop open the sidebar in Sheets for you, ready to use. Okay, so let's jump in with a real life example of using Formula God. First thing we're going to do here is a simple sum. So we're going to select the salary data in column J and say sum the annual salary. We're going to pick an output cell here. This is where you want to output the result of your command to Formula God. So the cell that I want to output this in, just below our annual salary, is going to be in J26. So we can just type J26 into the formula bar and press Ask Formula God. Okay, so we can see Formula God has given us a result here. It's given us a nice little title there of total annual salary, as well as the summed range beneath that. So just a quick simple example of how we do a sum in Formula God. Moving on to another example, we'll now look at averages. So what we want to do here is get the average age from this column of ages here. So we'll select that range of data, jump over to the formula bar and type in give me the average age. And again, we'll pick an output cell for that. Here we're going to pick age 26, so it pops out at the bottom, and we can ask Formula God. And as you can see here, Formula God has again given us a result with a nice title. We just open that up so we can see we've got average age here at 45.3. So another simple example of how to run a command just using plain language and also getting some nicely formatted titles along with that. Okay, now onto something a little bit more interesting. One of the things we know people can get frustrated in Sheets when working with data is taking data that's in one column and separating it out into two. For example, here on names, we might want to split that out into first and last name. So first thing we'll do is insert a column to the left. This is the column where we will populate the last names. So let's go ahead and select the name data. We jump over to the formula bar and we'll type split the name into first name and last name. Now, we're not going to pick an output cell for this because we want to overwrite the data that is in column B, and we want to see that data populated in column C for the last name. So again, we'll press Ask Formula God, and we just wait a sec while this works. As you can see, Formula God has again given us result. It has successfully split out all of those first names and last names, and it has rewritten the titles in both of those columns too. So a very quick way of doing things like this type of formatting that if you're doing this manually might take a long time to do. So things like this are very fast in Formula God, and again an easy way to do something in plain language. Right, now let's do that in the reverse. We might want to combine those names back together, or we might have started out with first name and last name separated, and we want to combine those columns or concatenate those columns. So we go ahead and select the first name and last name data across B and C. We jump over to the formula bar and we'll say combine first name and last name. Again, no output cell because we want to overwrite that data, and we hit Ask Formula God and let that run. And you can see here, Formula God has successfully turned those back into one column and conveniently relabeled the column title as full name. So the last thing to do here would just be to delete that empty column that we no longer need. Next, another quite simple example. Let's find some min and max values. So let's do this on annual salary. We'll jump in and select that annual salary data, and we'll type in the formula bar, list the min and max values. We'll choose an output cell for this because we don't want to overwrite our data. So let's output this just at the bottom of the column in J27. We'll ask Formula God and let that load. And you can see again here, Formula God has given us two inputs here, two outputs. Min annual salary, which it has found the smallest value in the range there, and also the max annual salary, where it has found the largest value in the range. And again, it's given us two nice titles there, so we can be very clear on what the output is that we're getting. Now on to some if statements. So we're going to be looking at the ethnicity data here, and we want to do a question that depends on if it is X, then do Y. So we will select the ethnicity data, and we're going to say count the number of cells if Asian. We'll give this a output cell in G26, 27 again. Just so it pops up below, and we'll let that load. And as you can see, Formula God has given us the number of Asian cells, which are 8. Now let's do another example of an if statement. Let's say we're looking at business units and we specifically want to find some information about corporate and label up some information in a column next to it. So we'll select that data and we'll say if the business unit is corporate, return OK. We're going to choose F1 as the output cell here so that it populates the new column we made, and we let that load. So you can see Formula God has populated OK next to anywhere where we have the corporate label in business unit. But that might not be enough. Now we've got some data labeled with information in an extra column and no information on the rest of the data in that column. So let's append our original command. We're going to make sure we have the data selected and jump back over to the formula bar. And what we'll say instead is if the business unit is corporate, return OK. If not, return oh no. We'll put F1 again as our output so that it outputs, the output overwrites the existing OKs. We'll ask Formula God and let that load. And we can see again here, Formula God has successfully filled that column, and it's also now given us a header for the column called status. Well, we'll throw in another little example of something you can do in Formula God, which is character counts. Doesn't make a ton of sense in context for this sheet, but we do it anyways just to show you how easy that is. So let's say we want to do this in business unit. We'll select that data. We'll jump over to the formula bar and we'll ask, count the number of characters per cell. We'll put that in F1 again, so we populate that column and we let it load. Now, as you can see, Formula God has successfully calculated the characters in each of those cells and give us a nice title there of character count. Next, let's look at rounding. So what we want to do here is round up the annual salary to the nearest 1000. We'll insert a new column so we can have them side by side to compare, and we go ahead and select the annual salary data. In the formula bar, we're going to type round up the annual salaries to the nearest 1000. We can put per cell here. We could put for each cell, or we could just leave that out altogether and it will understand what we're asking it. We're going to put this in L1, which is the column right next to K there, and we let it load. And you can see here, Formula God has successfully given us the annual salaries rounded with a nice title there up to the nearest 1000. Now let's do something with the entire data on our sheet. Let's look at filtering. Now, filtering I've found in Formula God is one of the most useful commands that you can give it. So let's look at this example. We'll select all of our data, and let's say we want to find Caucasian females and just pull out their data. So let's say filter the data by Caucasian females. And you can see there I've made a little spelling mistake. It doesn't normally matter in Formula God. And we put that in Q1 because we want to populate a new sheet. You can see here there was a previous example, so we're going to overwrite that example and we let it load. And we can see here Formula God has successfully pulled out all of the data and give us a new little table for Caucasian females only. So this is a very fast way of pulling complex data out of a large sheet without having to do multiple filters. You can simply select all your data, give it the inputs that you need, and populate a new table. Right, on to the last example that we look at today. Let's look at autofills. Autofill is exactly what it says. You have a empty column with a heading, and you want to autofill the data based on the heading. So what we'll do in this example is we're going to find the total compensation for these employees. In order to do that, we want annual salary and bonus. So let's first insert a new column to the right of bonus. That's where we're going to populate the total compensation. We'll now go ahead and select all three columns. And in the formula bar, we'll simply type autofill. We're not going to give this an output cell because we want to overwrite the data so that it autofills that empty column. We'll hit Ask Formula God and let it load. And you can see there, Formula God has successfully calculated the total compensation possible for these employees. You just open that up by combining annual salary and bonus. No other input other than the word autofill. And this goes back to what I said at the start of this video, where if your headers are accurate, Formula God can gather context much better, and you can get to a place where even without needing to put in complex commands, you can use things like autofill just to get data out very quickly. And as a last little bonus here, we're just going to format these values as pound values just to show you the formatting capabilities to a Formula God. So we'll say format the values as pound values and let that load. And you can see Formula God has quickly give us the values in pounds. That's it for today. Thank you if you've made it this far for sticking with us and having a look through some examples of what Formula God can do. I'm barely scratching the surface here, really just going over some of the probably most common use cases for Google Sheets. So if you guys have watched this and you didn't get an answer to a question you have, please just leave a comment or get in touch with us over at formulagod.ai, and we'll be happy to help and happy to stick out more videos on anything you get stuck on. But yeah, thanks for following along in this video, and don't forget to follow the channel for more updates on Formula God. Thanks guys.